I'm IBM's data science evangelist, James Kobielus, and we're here at the Apache Spark Maker Community event at Galvanize in San Francisco, and we're talking with Joe Caserta, who is the founder and president of Caserta Concepts and a leading expert in this area, data and analytics. Joe, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, your company, and what you're doing in this area.
Pleasure to be here, Jim. I have about 30 years experience in data, started in 1986, mostly trying to get data out of transaction systems for the first 10 years. In 1996, discovered dimensional data modeling and data warehousing. Was dedicated to that for the following decade. Launched my own company in 2001, doing data warehousing, business intelligence, and analytics. 2004, I wrote the Data Warehouse ETL Toolkit with Ralph Kimball, which became industry bestseller and the de facto standard on how to do data integration for analytics. And then in 2009, discovered big data. You know, the natural progression of data from transaction systems to dimensional data warehouses to big data analytics just makes a whole lot of sense to me. And so became fully invested in all three of those paradigms over the past 3 decades. So now, since 2009, we're about 7 years in of being, pretty deep into the big data space.
What's hot these days with Caserta Concepts and your customers?
So the evolution was, just figuring out what is a good use case for big data. And then after we discovered some good use cases, then it was just proof of concepts. Do these technologies actually work? And then after that, it was starting to try to productionalize very fit-for-purpose solutions. But in the past couple of years, we've really changed the way businesses in general are running. Really becoming a go-to company, the consulting firm that I own, to help companies that are going through a major transition where they have to become an analytics-driven company to survive. So we are doing enterprise-wide solutions now, helping companies change the way they do business.
Are you doing any work that involves that kind of a complex multi-tier environment that might have a data warehouse, you might have OLAP cubes, you might have a bit of Hadoop?
I came up with the concept of a data pyramid about 3 years ago. And what the data pyramid is, it's very neatly divided into 4 tiers. The first tier is kind of like old school staging, what we call the landing area or loading zone for data in general that you want to perform analytics on. It collects all of the data throughout your enterprise in full fidelity, so you can always go back to figuring out why you're making the decisions you're making. That is typically Hadoop, doesn't need to be Hadoop, but it is some kind of unstructured environment, file system, highly distributed, just to capture the data as is. And then above that, then we have the data lake. The data lake gets data out of the landing area, also enriches it, because if you think of data coming in...
How do you define a data lake? I want to hear your definition before we go further here. Because I thought that like when you're talking about unstructured ETL, quite often you land that data in what many of our clients call a data lake, but you seem to be referring to data lake in a different context.
And it's not surprising that there is ambiguity around what is a data lake, because 30 years after the data warehouse was created, there's still ambiguity about what a data warehouse is, right? So how could the data lake possibly be clear? So the way I define a data lake is, so you have a landing area where you have all of your basically event data streaming in. And then you have data assets like your data warehouse, master data management systems, which has all of your reference data, all of your master data. What the data lake is it takes all of your streaming event data, which are basically, JSON files, maybe some data from other databases, usually just a string of codes, right, that don't have a lot of meaning or context to it. So what we do is we take it and we enrich it with reference data. Because for a data scientist, knowing that an event happened is not all that interesting until you know who made the event, what type of event was it. Was the person who made the event a smoker? Was he white? Was he middle-aged, right? And once you have all of that attribution, now you have interesting data. That data is all lives within the data lake. So it's lightly enriched, lightly governed, not fully governed, lightly governed and lightly structured sometimes. And the technology could be Hadoop, could be a NoSQL database, it could be a relational database. It really depends. And it's not all or nothing. It really depends on the use case that you need.
We're seeing our customers seeing more of what you're referring to as a data lake for event data, related to the Internet of Things, because the Internet of Things is a massive source of event data. Are you doing any projects or your customers in the area of IoT as it relates to their data lakes?
With our clients, that's usually how the concept of a data lake is born.
Yeah.
Because they're experiencing data they've never experienced before, usually coming from the Internet of Things, like Fitbit data or electronic medical devices or streaming off of meters, for power companies. Wherever they have data that's generated by a machine rather than generated by a human being, in order to figure out if it has value, figure out if it has, if it's credible, figure out what the structure is, you need to land it somewhere first and then interrogate it. And that data exploration or data discovery really is done within a lake. And it can't be fully structured because we don't know what the structure is, right? So the concept of structuring data, then profiling it, and then doing reporting and analytics on it, that's old thinking, and that really is not really working anymore. Now what it is just ingest it and start analyzing it right away. Once you figure out what it is, then you can apply structure and apply allow it to the masses.
Have you been making any use of the runtimes or libraries in the Spark for streaming analytics or for graph analysis of that event data? Is that something you're looking at or using?
Yeah, so graph analysis I think is probably the most exciting use case that we have in the big data paradigm. Graph, I think, is going to be not even the far off future. This year, we're using graph for master data management. We're using it for recommendation engines. We're using it for identity resolution. It's becoming the go-to technology for a lot of our solutions out there.
What really excites you in terms of the leading technologies?
Spark, I think, is one of the most exciting technologies out there today in the big data paradigm. The thing I like about Spark is that on the same data set at rest, you can use SQL, you can use Scala, you can use Python, you can use R, and it really, for the first time, using the same, notebook technology on the same data set, you can satisfy business users, you can satisfy data engineers, you can satisfy data scientists and power, deep analysts, which never really existed before. Everyone had their own little space. Which meant you had copies and copies of the same data in all different formats, where now you can actually have this concept of the data lake can be the go-to place throughout the enterprise with Spark technology, both doing the ETL to prepare it and then also doing the analytics on top of it.
We're looking forward to engaging with you at this event. Thank you very much.